I want to answer these 4 questions. Number 1, what is the linkage between these various calls to creation care, and how are they related? Number 2, what are our challenges and barriers internally and externally to working together in the faith and climate change communities to address these and other creation care concerns? Number 3, what are our strengths and assets as a working network? And number 4, how do we effectively and successfully work together to answer these and other calls to creation care?
Okay, so we're going to dive in here. We're a small group, so we may be able to address all 4, and if we don't, we're going to be okay with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just read the questions that we have. What is the linkage between these various calls to creation care, and how are they related? The second question is, what are our challenges and barriers internally and externally to work together in the faith and climate change communities to address these and other creation care concerns? 3, what are our strengths and assets as a working network? 4, how do we effectively and successfully work together to answer these and other calls to creation care? So we like to just go around the room and deal with them one at a time so we can develop conversation. I think with the smaller body, we can have opportunity for conversation around those and then come to a consensus as to how we want to report out. Is that good?
Sounds good.
Okay. So what is the linkage between these various calls to creation care, and how are they related? What's our thoughts?
One thing that stood out to me throughout all the conversations is that it comes from actual creation. It's not something that came along when religious doctrine came into play. From every single one of the individuals that I heard today, it all came from the beginning. So for me, that's there's a purity to what we're saying here. This is not something that that man, let me not say man, let me be more ecumenical than that, that human beings have created. It's not something that we thought of. This is something that came directly from the divine, from the mother and from the father.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else want to add to that?
I mean, this sort of goes without saying, but they all make it a moral issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just basic and moral.
Okay. So basic and moral. Okay.
Yeah, I guess to add to that, it's not a doctrinal thing, it's an ethical it's a lived ethic that we're talking about here.
I think within that it's a call. Because it's that lived ethic, there's a call there, there's a particular push that comes along with that as well.
Okay.
I would say getting down to the granular level when we as a group, but you as the individual begin to look at creation care and tactics, that's automatically taking care of every man, every woman, every child, every walk of life in addition to sustainable living and trees. But we're looking at when you do, whether it's doctrine based or like you said, I completely agree about creation, seeing the creation story come up. It's all about the essence of how do we treat each other morally and ethically. That's really the essence here, is how do we all agree on our own terms to still get to the same resolve.
Yeah.
And that's still treating someone equitable and fair. That's creation.
Okay.
Because if we mistreat each other, we'll mistreat the environment.
Okay. And for me to just add, I know I'm moderating, I'm supposed to be quiet, but I'm going to jump in. Because what I hear humanity, but we want to talk about everything that is created because God created everything. So we want to speak from a holistic standpoint of everything evolves out of that. So how we treat everything matters. So when we kind of just hinge on humanity, then we leave out all the other things that God created. And that's kind of why we're in the mess that we're in now. So let's have the whole language of everything that God created is a part of that moral, just ethic of what the work is that we're here to do.
It's really putting the voiceless, giving them a place at the table.
Yes.
Which we haven't done.
Yes.
Trees don't talk to us the way
Yes.
we think they would.
Yes.
Maybe they do, we just don't listen.
Well, we don't understand what they're saying because they do talk.
I know they do, actually, we
Yeah.
learned that recently, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, that's been our long-term, they
Right.
haven't had a voice
Right.
in our thinking and our understanding.
Yeah,
Well, I still wouldn't say that. because we get caught up in what we don't understand, and when we don't understand somebody else's language, we say that there is not a communication. But there is a communication even in the silence. There's a form of communication. So I think we might want to word that differently, and I don't want to hog our time on that because I don't have any words to add to that.
I don't think we
but-
disagree. I think
yeah.
what I'm saying is where we have been.
Yeah.
You're talking about where we want to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about where we've been. We ignore that which we don't understand and we don't comprehend. So we ignore that and say that we are a voice for the voiceless. But everything communicates. We may not be listening. It's just that saying that God speaks, and it's like, well, He spoke in ancient times, but He's not speaking now. But God is speaking. Are we hearing and identifying
We're
what God
open
is
to
saying?
hearing
Yeah.
that.
So that's all That's all.
I hear ya.
So anyone else?
I just want to add that the science tells us that it's all connected.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah.
And so we can't just care for humans because they won't survive.
Exactly.
Scientifically, I care.
Yeah, they do that thing with the bee. What
Right,
happens
Bees,
if the
yeah.
bee becomes extinct? How it impacts
right.
everything.
the pollination.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
plants would
And if you
build
watch that
houses.
bee movie, it's clear.
Yeah.
Watch the bee movie.
Well, just one quick thing to add here, since we keep talking about the table and we talk about this whole creation piece and being sustainable and all these different things. I think oftentimes we forget what the table was made from, and it wasn't made out of nothing. It was made from something else, and it wasn't man. It was created from whatever the natural elements were. And I think when we say the table, we look at it as this, and we don't look at the bits and pieces that came into making this table. Because all the lots of natural stuff came into this. So I think when we're looking at that and saying the table, we have to take into account there's more than just what we see as the finished product.
Okay, good. Anything else? And I hope someone was grasping this.
Take notes, take notes.
Okay. So do we have a consensus statement out of all of the conversation that we want to be able to present? You want to read what we have? Please, ma'am.
Well, that because it seems to be a moral issue across faith traditions, that it's very basic and pure. It's above doctrine, it's a call and a lived ethic, that we want to take care of everyone and every natural thing. And it's connected also to fairness and equity.
Well, okay.
Are we good with that? Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's look at 2. What are our challenges and barriers internally and externally to work together in the faith and climate change communities to address these and other creation care concerns?
One thing that came to me in this will be, I agree with everything I've heard today, but one point I do want to bring in is just a person who was an educator and still am an educator for years in the school system and outside the school system, because sometimes I didn't agree with the curriculum and how they treated kids in the pipeline, right? And so going back to the first point that we were all discussing, the point I made, I really internally, externally, the challenge is making sure our youth, our children, and our people that are of color, as a woman of color who was a part of these communities that everyone speaks so freely of. I was a part of the disenfranchised. I'm still a part of that community because it's my people. And so to make sure that we are making not just room, making room at the table is great, but I don't need to necessarily be invited to feel like I can contribute something. I just need to make sure there's room to say to my youth, hey, climate change matters to you. We're all environmentalists. We are. When we drink our well water and it was running dry with pollutants or running dry or just have pollutants, we're environmentalists. When we're looking at Duplin County and what's happening to my neighbors and friends there, we're all environmentalists. We may not say the same words, we may not cope with the same words, but we are all living and breathing when we have cancer and we have lung and bronchial cancer in the eastern part. We go to the western part and we see the poultry factory that I almost worked in as a teenager. And now I see the residual effects, and so it's teaching and bringing in those impoverished, at-risk, disenfranchised persons that can speak on their own behalf to tell you and us exactly what they need. I don't need someone to speak on my behalf. Tell me when the event is, I can speak on my behalf. And then at that point, teach my people. I know, but I'm saying in a unison thing, the challenge is making sure that we're teaching them the native languages of listening to the trees that their ancestors knew. That's the part. That's the challenge, is that helping is at a policy level is great, but what is the quote? If you give a man a fish, need for a day. But if you teach that person how to fish, number one, you can teach them how to respect the water when they fish. You can teach them how to do it ecologically sound without devastation. You can teach them many different ways and facets, but they can then carry that on, and we've lost that. And when I say we, I come from over 10 generations of farmers, but we lost that during the factory. We already know that. My parents met in Haynes factory. We lost that. We need that, and I think that's part of the challenge I definitely want to bring as a woman, because there's nothing else I can add, because we already know that y'all are experts. It's just that human side of saying I know my kids and what they need. Yeah.
Can you read again what this second
Second one
point
says,
is?
what are our challenges and barriers internally and externally to working together in the faith and climate change communities to address these and other creation care concerns?
So the two that I got, or two or three I actually got out from what you said, were that there are groups that have been disenfranchised that need to learn how to speak. They know they're welcome at the table, at least we're gonna make sure they are, but they need to learn how to speak in a way that will be understood.
And I want to add to that is making sure that we go to them. Because a
We go
lot of
to
times
them.
with communities, we have to make the effort to go into those communities because there's trust building, because they don't trust the system. It's
So-
obvious why.
But I'm not sure that I heard that we need to teach them how to speak, more so than we need to hear them speak in their language.
Exactly, because they can tell
So,
us exactly
exactly.
what they're going
Right,
through
right.
without us looking at statistics and data and saying this many have cancer. They have it.
Yeah.
They can tell
They
us.
can
Well, that was my second point.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
We did that. We did that.
Yeah, but then understanding their language, because I think what happens a lot of times is that we are so, if the language isn't here,
Yep.
then one, they don't know,
Yep.
two, they don't know how to communicate, which is totally unfair.
It is.
They know
They know.
in their language, we need to be sensitive to hear in the language that they know,
Exactly.
that we can come together and still speak as one. So when we're at the table, we're not being dismissive.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times we're dismissive when the language is not here,
Exactly.
it's here.
Exactly. Because
So
as a young
we're saying that the
person,
language,
you know,
the
when we come
experience is the
in,
same.
it's like, oh, you don't have experience. You haven't been, and I've been in the movement for 40 years. Okay, we're in our 20s. We're not going to be in the movement for 40 years yet.
yeah,
But we've been in the movement for 20 years because
That's it.
our environment has made
Made
us
us.
be in the
Yeah.
movement. And we
Right.
are the victims of that. And I don't like using the word victim because
Right.
I'm not a victim. I'm a victor, but still ain't yet.
right. But you're an experiencer of the,
Experience, exactly.
so,
I think when we're looking, first of all, that was a phenomenal response. So, but when we're looking at internally, I think what happens oftentimes when we're looking at communities of faith is there's a question about doctrine. You know, I'm not Methodist, I'm not this, I'm not that, so they don't necessarily meet. And I think summits like this allow folks to recognize that we are saying the same thing. And that goes back to that whole language thing, because we believe that we're speaking a different language than, say, someone else, but we're really saying the same thing. And then what happens is when we're saying the same thing, but we're saying it in so many different places, people get confused. Because you may say it's something just slightly different from me, and then it gets a different response. Whereas when we're able to come together like this, in this sort of setting, we can all say, okay, this is how we're going to say it, and therefore we can go out and do the work appropriately. So it doesn't become fragmented.
I think just being able to listen and be willing to modify our language if it doesn't fit somebody. I mean, if, like just the back and forth that we just had, right? You know, being able to step back and say, okay, so let me hear what's being said here, and if I even need to modify my language, because I think one of the things that I tried to say and what I presented was, there are some people who don't understand creation as created by God. There are. And we want those people at the table. I mean, these are people who have deep moral convictions, but may not fall into the rubric of the faith community. And I understand we're trying to appeal to the faith community and mobilize the faith community, but I think there's a lot of people out there with deep spiritual convictions, and so to be able to say, when we're having our conversation, how do we make room for that, or how do we allow ourselves to put on hold, or for our own selves, whatever our own faith version of something might be, and make room for that other, which I think we started doing today when we started saying, okay, we're not going to say creator God, we're going to just talk about creator or creation versus, you know, an anthropomorphic God thing, which some people are just like, that doesn't work for me.
yeah. So the word that I want to also echo is that we say faith, but we left out spiritual, which would allow persons who don't connect with the word faith, but connect with the word spiritual, would know that they are welcome at the table. So putting the word spiritual would be very helpful and inclusive in the language.
And I think that takes away that whole piece of idea of doctrine, doctrines and things like that, and takes religion out of the whole situation. Because people get crazy about religion, one side or the other. So when we're able to just say spiritually, you take that how you want.
Yeah. And I was going to say that, we are making an assumption that faith persons get it. Not every faith person gets it. So, I just want to put that out there for information.
Okay, I was in number 4, and I know how to use one of these. Okay, so I was in group number 4, and we actually only got to 2 questions. But what is the linkage between these various calls to creation care, and how are they related, and how do we create effectively and successfully work together to answer these and other calls to creation care? So we went around the table, we talked about students and teachers. That would include all different levels of students and all different levels of teachers. We need to be united. I know that sounds like, just what we've been talking about all day, but we can't forget it. That is the key. We need to be united. We need to become experts in what we're talking about. We don't need to know it all, but we need to know how to be able to talk about what we're focused on and how to be able to move this forward. And I have some ideas, but I don't have time right now. Access to different environmental groups. We've absolutely got to make sure that not just the environmental groups, though, all the different faith-based groups and any other groups, the Rotary Club, the whatever club is out there, just get involved so that you can be the voice, because so often, like Leadership Winston-Salem, I'm the only one that talks about the issues of co-housing. They don't even know what it is. Maybe some of you know bigger, but that's okay. Work with the Poor People's Campaign. We really thought that was so important. We had to get further meetings, so we can't let this just be one time, we draft this up and we all go away. Let's see, commercialization and consumerism. That's another area that is just so important. And this, we need to have other groups other than just students, teachers, and the groups, businesses, artists, etc.
Very good, thank you. Group number 3.
So we're group number 3. I think that a concern in our group was that here's another group coming into being. There are a lot of groups. So what is it that's distinctive about this group and what would sustain it? In my experience, every time people try to form an umbrella group, it fails. So actually that's not so much from the group, but from myself. But from the group, there was an emphasis on the single focus of the group. It was expressed another way as the specificity of the group. And that was a very clear definition of what constitutes clean energy. So we're not talking about carbon pricing, we're not talking about carbon trading. There's an emphasis on positivity, that what we're trying to do is build a clean energy future that is specifically solar, wind, water, and geothermal based. We've learned this week today, I've learned today anyway, that there is a difference between carbon based and fossil fuel based. I've never really thought about it, but methane does involve a reduction of carbon, but it's not a reduction of fossil fuel or greenhouse gases. We did not, in our statement, talk about nuclear, but in our group, I think maybe should be added that it would be non-nuclear as well as non-carbon and non-fossil fuel. The strengths of the group are diversity, and the key to the future would be to define what priorities are. Again, in my view, not to let it become an umbrella group dealing with all kinds of issues issues related to creation care, focusing on the clean energy. And set our priorities and involve the members of the network in working in their communities.
Excellent. Thank you.
We don't address questions 3 and 4. And the first part of it was the strengths and assets of our groups, of our gathering. And basically what we were talking about is actions that we can take in order to strengthen our strengths and assets. So one of the things that was mentioned was to do an asset mapping of what is happening here as a group, what we have to offer. We want to know how many people we represent to the group. So as each of our groups has reported in, each of us represents a certain number of people. So how many people are there that we represent? I'm sure it's a large number of people. So we should probably find that out and map it. And then what are the assets of each of these groups? What are the assets that we can provide to the general overall group? How much money have the local, discovering how much money local politicians have taken from you. And these are all mapping things. And then find out how many votes they have done on issues specific to their community that have
So
farm progress toward and then an exploration of what are the financial interests that we can deliver to the community that will kill the beast, which is your words, which means to overcome the power of money or government. And then we have truth on our side, we have the responsibility to get it out, which means we need to tap into the social media and high-tech community within our groups. And we need to champion that tech support and advance it. We also develop and nurture a Trojan horse tactic by utilizing people on the inside who work in our groups. People who work for Duke, people who work for the big banks, we'll get them to understand what we're trying to do and have them help us by getting on the inside and convincing people on the inside. And then the next question we addressed was how we work effectively together. One thing that came up was anti-oppression work skills need to be developed among white folks. We have a massive white people problem because the majority of people who are poor in this country are actually, that's not part of our base.
So, we talked about the beauty of working with creation care is that it's about creation. It's not about one doctrine. It has a purity of focus. It's a moral issue. It's pretty basic. It's not doctrinaire. It's a call. It's a lived ethic. It's about taking care of everyone and every natural thing. Connecting to fairness and equity. So it's very powerful as an idea. Challenges and barriers. I love what someone said about the digital divide, about the finance divide. We talked a lot about the language divide. And the fact that different communities have different names and ways of talking about our environment, and talking about climate change, and health impacts are addressed in some communities. And they're talking about the environment, but they don't also realize it because they're talking about air pollution and asthma and health impacts. And so the key is to make sure that when we are at the table, we are aware of the language we're using. When we are entering other communities, that we try to work in that language, that we recognize that the names and categories that are different are the same concept. And so we have to build trust. We also talk more about spirituality and less about religion, because religious institutions have traditionally divided us, and they are divisive from parts of the world, whereas the faith and the spirituality can connect. And again, maybe the basic precepts we've heard today are the same, and it's really language thing. So building that trust is important. Also for us not to be dismissive of people using different terms and different language. That we need to include everyone at the table and to listen to them. The youth in particular were mentioned. We see that it is their future. They can be so active and are so important. Young people, people of color, people who have been disenfranchised, traditionally aren't listened to. By the way, as a political figure, I can tell you, campaign consultants will tell you, don't go speak to young people because they don't vote. That is told to me. Don't go to these young, why do you go to high school and speak? Young people don't vote. Or why do you go to colleges? They don't vote proportionally to their numbers. And this is true of the Latino community. There are many groups that I was told by consultants who look at the numbers, why are you wasting your time with them? Yes, this goes on. And of course, I thought the system, and I created some powerful enemies, made it hard for me to get reelected. But I did the right thing. But this is the kind of thing that people in marginalized communities don't realize, the importance of making that connection to the political powers that be. So strengths, we can answer the last two questions really quickly. Our strengths is that we do speak many languages, that we are a very diverse coalition, and that we can build on those individual languages to connect to every single group, and to respect, to value, and to include each group, and use the language of the community. And so the best way to work together is to listen actively, to listen in the voice of those who are speaking.
Thank you so much for all that hard work. Thank you so much for all of the ideas that came up. And at this point in time, I'm feeling like we need to make some decisions. After these conversations today, I think I've heard over and over again the need to work together. I think I've heard over and over again an idea that we can find a way to work together. So how many of you all here would be willing to sign on with this new network, North Carolina Creation Care Network? That looks pretty good. But I hope that means that let's give ourselves a hand for that. I'm grateful to see that, because what that means to me is that we have a group of people who are willing to work together, despite our, I know we hate this term, silos, despite our different backgrounds, our different concerns. We need to work together to achieve that larger goal. And I'm grateful to see that. As we prepare to go out, a few things that we need to talk about are what are some things that we can begin to do? What are some actions that we can begin